Great, thank you. Welcome everybody to the Climate Center's webinar on clean tech business for a climate safe future. My name is Doron Amran. I am the business network manager here at the Climate Center, and I'm very happy that you could join us for this important topic. We've got some great speakers here today, and before I turn it over to the first of those, I would just like to share screen and go over a couple of quick items and set a little bit of context for us. So here we go. This webinar is part of a series of webinars. The Climate Center runs a regular webinar series every year. This year, it's called Envisioning a Climate Safe California, Stories and Solutions. Many of you have attended previous webinars in this series, and some of you are here for the first time. So for those of you who are here for the first time, welcome. Today's topic is clean tech business for a climate safe future. We're going to be hearing from business leaders from around the state. In fact, one of them is even joining us from farther away than that. But we'll be talking about how clean tech business is critical to building a climate safe future here in California. I would point out we do have more webinars upcoming. The next one is on the appropriate role of hydrogen in our climate safe future. That will be August 30th. We will then be hosting a webinar on nature-based solutions to the climate crisis. We'll be doing a legislative wrap-up in the fall and then launching a new webinar series next year. So stay tuned, keep in touch with your email, and we'll make sure that you hear about those and have an opportunity to register. I would like to first take a moment to thank our sponsors who make this webinar and all our work possible. These are some of our webinar sponsors. I would particularly like to thank River City Bank, who have been supporting the Climate Center for many years and are supporting this webinar series, and our major players in this area. We'll be hearing from Rosa Cuchicha a little bit later, who's going to be the moderator of our panel, and she can tell you a little bit more about River City Bank. Also want to thank SunPower. We have Krishna from SunPower here. We'll be talking about what they're doing in some of this space. Very interesting stuff. And then as all of our other sponsors, Silicon Valley Clean Energy, LA Department of Water and Power, Sunrun, MCE, Sonoma Clean Power, Peninsula Clean Energy, Renewable America, Calpine Energy Solutions, all sponsored this webinar series, and we appreciate them all very much. And all of these organizations are also part of our Climate Center Business Network that I will talk about in just a moment. I also want to thank our webinar promotional partners who have helped ensure that many of you are here today. So thanks to all of these organizations. I would particularly like to thank Joint Venture Silicon Valley. It's more than just a promotional partner. Joint Venture Silicon Valley and the Climate Center have a long relationship of working together to sort of build momentum for climate safe business practices in Silicon Valley and elsewhere. We understand how important that part of the state is in driving innovation, not just here in California, but around the world. And we're proud to work with Joint Venture, as well as all of these other organizations and the many nonprofits with whom we partner in our work. Quickly, today's agenda. After I'm done yapping, we'll hear from Russ Hancock, President and CEO of Joint Venture Silicon Valley, and then turn it over to our panel that will be moderated by Rosa Cuchicha. It's going to feature Elhai Farkash from Zira, Carmen Best from Recurve, and Krishna Nutaki from SunPower. Then we're going to have some time for Q&A. So please put your questions in the Q&A portal. You can also comment through the chat, but if you have questions for our panelists, please put them into the Q&A portal. We'll be managing all of those in the background and hopefully have a nice, robust Q&A and discussion section towards the end. And please don't leave before this webinar is over, because we're going to give you a chance to take action. Part of all of our webinars is a take action portion, and we have an opportunity for you to make your voice heard in Sacramento on this important subject towards the end of the webinar. But before I turn it over to first Russell Hancock to help set a little bit more context, I just want to make sure that everyone is aware that this webinar is part of the Climate Center's program to promote our policy platform, Climate Safe California. Climate Safe California, which I'll describe in a moment, is a pathway to net negative emissions by 2030. And we are of the firm belief that business not only can, but must help make California be the first state in the nation to become carbon negative. And we believe that this presents a great opportunity for the business community to build new businesses. Our vision is thriving, healthy communities. We envision a future where everyone benefits from equitable access to climate solutions, from clean air to renewable energy, healthy food, and more. And in today's context, I just want to point out that more means more good green jobs. It's absolutely essential as we work to phase out polluting fuels and transition California away from being an oil-producing state to being an exclusively renewable energy and clean energy state, that we ensure that we provide the transition and the jobs and take care of the workers and the families and their communities. Because at the end of the day, if the climate is stable, but people aren't able to afford their lives, then we haven't really achieved what we want to achieve. People are at the heart of what we're doing, and we want to make sure that we provide for those people. And that's why part of the reason why business is so critical to this mission that we're on. Just to really highlight some points that some of you may have heard before, right now, by not addressing the climate crisis at the speed and scale that we should, we are simply pushing those costs down the road. It costs less to invest today than it does to wait. If we invest $47 billion a year now, we can avoid having to spend over double that starting in 2030. These are not just numbers that we made up. We've leaned on Energy Innovation and their report on the cost of delay around the country to do some analysis of what it would really look like. Just to give you an example, just in 2018, the wildfires in California caused $150 billion in damages. So if we don't address the issue, we're going to see more 130-degree heat days. We're going to see more flooding, more cost, and more suffering by humans and others. So let's make sure that we make the investments now based on this report and our analysis. Breaking it down here for California, we estimate that if we invest $80 billion in California climate action, that can generate over 700,000 jobs. And so this is how we build a prosperous and climate stable and climate safe future in California. So Climate Safe California is a comprehensive platform, leans on the science, places communities first, very equity focused, and you too can be part of the Climate Safe California campaign, whether you're a business or not. But if you are a business, I just want to emphasize how important we feel that business is in building this future. At the end of the day, nonprofits, we build coalitions, we build movements, but we don't build infrastructure. It's businesses that do most of that. We've been working with businesses for over a decade. Our history as a 20-year nonprofit is always played well with businesses that agree that, as we do, that climate action is essential. Over 70 dues-paying members are part of our business network, and that does include River City Bank and SunPower and others. Over 90 businesses have joined almost 2,000 others in endorsing Climate Safe California, and we're very proud of our relationship with the business community. I'm going to ask my colleague Rob to drop two links into the chat for you. One is for you to endorse Climate Safe California. If you have not yet done so, we encourage you to join over 2,000 individuals, businesses, elected officials, and nonprofits, from congresspeople to state senators and assembly members who have endorsed Climate Safe California, and you can do the same. We'll drop a little link into the chat. And if you are part of a business and interested in being part of our business network, have the opportunity to participate in events like this, come to networking events. We're doing one in LA in the fall, another one in San Francisco. We'd love to invite you. Please click on the second link that Rob's going to send. That's going to be a link to our business network page, where you can learn more about what our business network is and how you can join that business network and be involved in the work and support our policy platform. So thank you all for endorsing Climate Safe California. And if you're interested in finding out more about the business network, my phone number, Duran, and my email are both on that business network page. You can also drop a note in the chat to me, and I'd be happy to set up a call to talk about that. But today we want to talk about a climate safe future and clean tech business. And before we turn to our panel, Russell Hancock from Joint Venture Silicon Valley is here, and I'd like to turn it over to Russ right now to help provide a little bit more context. Russ, tell us what you're seeing in Silicon Valley. What are the challenges companies are facing? What are the opportunities that they're seeing?
Thank you, Doron. Thank you, Climate Center. I'm really happy to be here. In fact, I'm honored to be here, and I consider this to be the kind of company that I would aspire to keep. Tremendous respect for everybody participating today. We love our relationship with the Climate Center. We're Climate Center's biggest fans. I'm here because I'm supposedly somebody who knows about Silicon Valley, its trends, its challenges, the crazy vicissitudes that have characterized us over the period. Why Silicon Valley? Why does it matter? Well, because this has been the engine of innovation for the state for a very long period of time. So folks organizing the webinar thought it would be nice to understand what's happening in Silicon Valley right now. What are our major trends at this moment in time? And then that leads us to the more important question by far, which is, can Silicon Valley be a major part of the planet's solution? Can the kind of innovation, company formation that has characterized us for so many decades, can that be applied to the planet's crisis? So I'd just like to set the scene for all of that. Let's understand, Silicon Valley really is the most prodigious regional economy in the history of regional economies. What it's done over the decades is pretty extraordinary. And what's extraordinary about it is that it has been characterized by wave after wave of innovation and entrepreneurship. And those waves have come and gone. They succeed each other, and they have moved Silicon Valley into new areas. They've required Silicon Valley to continuously reinvent itself. And the fact that that's been going on for so many decades is actually quite extraordinary. In fact, in college economics classes, you learn that usually the opposite is the case, that there will be one wave of innovation that would come, and comparative advantage would then be bestowed upon an actor, upon an entrant, but that advantage always shifts. And yet for some reason that hasn't been the case with Silicon Valley over its long history. The advantage has stayed here as we continuously reinvent ourselves. Now, our history has been one of boom and bust. That seems to be our cycle. It's a cycle that makes sense. The industries that are invented here reach a point of maturity, and then very often they become defunct, and they're replaced by new technologies, by disruptive technologies that issue then in another period of innovation and entrepreneurship. So that's been going on. And the actual fact is that at this very moment in time, Silicon Valley is in a bit of a downturn. But I want to put that in some context for you. Yes, we've had booms and busts, and they usually happen with regularity. The phase that we're in right now has been extraordinary. I date it to 2008, when the nation and in fact the world succumbed to that epic recession, and Silicon Valley did too. We were the last economy to succumb, and then we were the first economy to emerge out of it. By 2009, we were already growth positive, and it ushered in this incredible wave that we've been riding, one that's fueled by social media, by new platforms, new softwares, internet companies, internet-based technologies, and all of the rest. It's been quite extraordinary. Not even a pandemic could dent the kind of growth and extraordinary productivity that we were experiencing. Most people thought that the pandemic would deal a blow to Silicon Valley. It turned out that the opposite was the case. It turned out that the pandemic was a bonanza for Silicon Valley's companies, especially those that were involved in the hunt for the vaccine, those that were providing the platforms for all of the goods and the services that we required in a sheltering environment. And so Silicon Valley actually saw its economy just go completely bonkers crazy during the pandemic, to the point where our market cap of our Silicon Valley companies rose from $9 trillion to $16 trillion. We've never seen anything like it. It's been extraordinary. So I tell you all of that because when the pandemic finally began to wane, that's when Silicon Valley entered a bit of a downturn, and the mood around here has been taciturn. There are folks that are thinking, gosh, has Silicon Valley lost its momentum? We want you to understand that that's actually not the case. Silicon Valley is thriving. Yes, we've gone through a period of layoffs. We characterize those as a necessary period of adjustment and recalibration while companies now downsize. They might have done some over-hiring during the boom of the pandemic. Now this recalibration is taking place, and we seem to be poised for liftoff into the next phase, which would appear to be artificial intelligence and all of the surrounding and supporting industries. But I want to tell you that's not the only area. We see Silicon Valley becoming active in a lot of other areas too, and some are getting less press than they should. Transportation, for example, we're seeing Silicon Valley emerge as a major player in the transportation space. And I mean conventional forms of transportation. I certainly mean electric vehicle industry, and I certainly mean the infrastructure for electrics, including the charging. But I'm also talking about futuristic modes of transportation where Silicon Valley companies are making serious inroads there. We're talking about autonomous flying objects. We're talking about drones and their potential. We're talking about craft that are capable of vertical lift, vertical landing, and can become a solution to classic problems of congestion. So we're seeing that emerge as a major category for investment, a major category for our venture capitalists. We're also seeing interesting emergence of agriculture. Ag tech is becoming a major Silicon Valley theme. We're talking about how to make agriculture more efficient, more to make more efficient use of water, to become more productive in smaller spaces, and then also the whole area of food substitutes, even robotics, even AI, all of this being applied to agriculture. So we may be on the cusp of a major revolution there. There comes the question, can Silicon Valley be as innovative in the environmental space, in the climate space, in the sustainability space? I just want to express my hope that that comes to pass. I also want to tell you that this one isn't straightforward. It's not going to be easy for Silicon Valley's famed pattern of innovation. Why do I say that? I want to make an obvious point, and I will oversimplify to make the point. One of the things that made Silicon Valley famous was software. But if you think about it, what is software? Software is the coding of electrons in a certain way that you then embed in a disk or in a streaming service. You then take that disk and you place it in a box, a brightly colored box. You shrink wrap it, and then you sell it. That's all there is to it. You count your money after that. What I want to point out is that the software industry and other Silicon Valley industries haven't had to trouble themselves with pesky things like regulation, or operating at utility scale, or being involved with government partners, or layers and layers of government partners at the regional, state, and federal level. That hasn't been how Silicon Valley has rolled. Silicon Valley has been characterized instead as cowboys, becoming crazy entrepreneurs and doing their own thing, and even thumbing their nose at government operations. If we are going to be effective for the sake of the planet, Silicon Valley has to learn a new way of doing things. That new way includes working with regulators, building things out on a utility scale, working with a host of partners that may inhibit speed and entry into markets. And yet that's how we have to roll if we're going to achieve the goals that the Climate Center has set for itself and for our state. My hope is that we can make that transition, but it's going to take the help and the instrumentality of people such as the ones that are now joining us on this call, and I'm anxious to hear from them. Thanks. That's the prelude for the discussion that you'll now enjoy.
Thank you very much, Russ. I really appreciate it. And I know you're going to stick around so that we can involve you in the panel discussion later. Really appreciate you setting the context and certainly talking about the challenges and opportunities in Silicon Valley. I think it's really critical to recognize we're talking about clean tech, that innovation is such a key part of what business does, and of course Silicon Valley's been at the forefront of that for a long time. Business is also able to do things at scale and understands the need for investments. And so with that in mind, I'd like to bring our panel on board. And I just want to point out, 72% of all of our climate greenhouse gas emissions in California come from three sectors, which are electricity, generation, distribution, transmission, industry and industrial processes, including the extraction and refining of fossil fuels, and of course, transportation. And we're going to be talking about all three of those here today. And we're also going to be talking a little bit about investment. And in order to get us started, I'd like to bring on the moderator for the next portion of our discussion, Rosa Kuchicha, who is from River City Bank. And Rosa, thank you for joining us. I'd like to turn the mic over to you to set a little context and introduce our panelists and have a discussion. Please.
Great. Thank you, Doron. And as he mentioned, I'm Rosa Kuchicha. I'm the director of the Clean Energy Division at River City Bank. River City Bank was founded in Sacramento, California, about 50 years ago. In fact, we're celebrating our 50th anniversary this year, which is a huge milestone for the banking industry, especially since we're still under the same family ownership. So we have deep rooted community ties and have since grown to be a premier business bank that serves customers all over California and now in neighboring states. And we're looking at expansions into some other states as well. I've been with the bank for almost 10 years now, and I've had the privilege of formally starting the bank's clean energy division back in 2018. We have some deep-rooted roots in community banking, as I mentioned, and our clean energy division was really born out of our connection with the community choice aggregators, or CCAs, as we refer to them here in California. Back in 2010, when the very first CCA was planning to launch services in California, in Marin County, they're now called MCE. There was no bank willing to step up and provide credit to the brand new entity that was very complex, not only because it's in the energy sector, which is an inherently complex industry to understand, but also because of the government ties and the fact that it's a government agency. And this entity only existed because of new policy that was enacted via state legislation. So our bank president at the time, CEO Steve Fleming, he met with the leadership team of MCE. This was back in 2010, which included the current CEO, Don Weiss, who many of you on this webinar may know and admire. And he was very impressed with her leadership and passion for the CCA, and took a chance, likes to call it a gut lending decision, which is not something that you'll hear bankers talk about often, but that was certainly the case here. And we lent them a relatively small amount of money at the time, and that helped MCE launch and become the very first CCA in California. For those of you that are familiar with the CCA space, you'll know that we've got an additional, I think 24 or so CCAs that have launched since 2010, and River City Bank has supported most of them, and this has really become sort of the cornerstone of our clean energy division. And I'll mention too that I do have some fond memories, and I want to give a shout out to the Climate Center for their role in the grassroots efforts of CCA back in the day. I remember sitting in some city council meetings and board of supervisor meetings with some of the staff of the Climate Center who are still there today. So some fond memories there, and still can't believe it's been over a decade almost. So with that gives you sort of the backstory of why we formally started a clean energy division. Back then, it was just me handling all the CCA clients with some back office support. And we decided it was time to expand and hire a team and look for opportunities within the clean energy sector that were outside of the CCA space, such as financing clean energy projects and providing financing for companies within the broader energy transition sector. So on that note, I want to welcome the audience to this webinar, and I did share a link to River City Bank's website where you can find my contact information If you have any questions for me, please reach out. You can reach me via email or cell phone. And of course, if you're looking for a new bank or even just looking to expand your banking relationships, now more than ever, it's important to have a strong banking relationship with banks that align with your values. You can reach me directly. And although my team specializes in the broader clean energy sector, we welcome all clients that are seeking strong community bank ties. And before I hand it over to our esteemed panel, I just wanted to tie in River City Bank's story to the topic of the webinar, which to a larger extent, as Russ mentioned, has to do with the importance of public-private partnerships. And I know that's sort of a buzzword and we've probably all heard it, and some of us may not even know exactly what that means, but just to point out the fact that River City Bank's Clean Energy Division probably wouldn't exist today if it wasn't for all the CCAs that were successful in California. Sure, there's some circularity there because we provided credit and whatnot, but the credit really goes to the CCAs. And ultimately, the CCAs wouldn't have been able to launch if it wasn't for the state legislation that was effectively enacting public policy that was effective. And so therein lies the circle of the public-private partnership. And on that note, I am going to turn it over to Elhai, and he's going to give you a quick introduction, and we'll move on to the panel.
Thank you, Rosa. Also, thank you, Doron and the Climate Center for inviting me here to talk about ZERA and what we do. So my name is Elhai Farkash. I'm the co-founder and CEO of ZERA, which is a software company based in San Mateo. Also have offices in San Diego and in Tel Aviv, where I'm originally from. What we do is we develop artificial intelligence for industrial operations management, which focuses on energy. This is how we started. Our story is actually a starting point with a research project funded by the California Energy Commission, which I will talk about in a few seconds. But first of all, what is it that we do? So as a software company focusing on artificial intelligence, we have a broad offering, which includes the connectivity, the communication, and the automation of energy metrics across industrial manufacturing organizations. We basically give leadership teams and executives and facility managers, as well as energy managers, the visibility into sustainability metrics, sustainability performance, costs, risks. So basically, what is happening in the production lines at any given moment, and how utilities are consumed, and how can you lower your energy intensity or your energy footprint. Our starting point is actually an energy research project by the Energy Institute, which is UC Berkeley, MIT, and University of Chicago together. And it was funded, basically a $5 million funding from the California Energy Commission that sparked it all. And it was distributed in more than 100 different manufacturers across California, and was measured and tested over time in regards to how can information and artificial intelligence help industrial manufacturers improve their energy footprint. So what we did and what we do today also is we connect to energy data from the utilities, from the machines, from many different types of sensors and controllers and meters and smart meters. And we also connect to the facility shop floor production systems. And we create a metric called energy intensity, which is basically the measurement of health of an industrial manufacturing facility. The way it works, it's basically how much energy am I consuming per unit of product, and that's what we try to optimize against. So just like in golf, we want the lowest score possible, the lowest energy footprint per unit of product. The way we do it is by using artificial intelligence agents, which are like energy managers that are there all the time, omniscient, omnipotent, working all the time over the mapping of assets and the energy consumption of different assets on the shop floor, basically understanding the relationship between energy consumption and production, which is the digitization agents, and of course, how we deliver insights to the shop floor operators, the machine operators, the plant managers to basically take action and improve those energy consumption metrics. Interesting part of it is when you use energy metrics or energy intensity per unit of product that you produce as your North Star, as your guideline, you actually improve many other processes. So energy footprint goes up per unit of product when you have downtime. And we are able to see it really, really fast. Even before the machines start to show downtime, we are able to start identifying it and basically alert on it. It's also about removing waste from the process, because what we measure is energy per finished good, and removing waste from that process basically improves your energy KPI per a finished good. It also helps in compliance and safety and staff, and with distributing the product along to other organizations such as the manufacturers' clients, the retailers, etc., etc. That is a very brief introduction into what Zera does and how we do things. And of course, this was also extended even more with a second project for the dairy processing industry in California, with another grant from the California Energy Commission, which I would love to tell about anyone that will ping me after the webinar. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Elhai. Carmen, I'd like to hand it over to you for an introduction.
Thank you. And I am going to be sharing my screen here. So let me pull that up. And there we go. Can everyone see that all right? So thanks again for the chance to participate today. Recurve offers an open source platform that enables planning, procurement, and deployment of demand flexibility as a virtual power plant. And our goal is really to help utilities and other entities to use demand side interventions in a way that is more equivalent to relying on the way they rely on supply side resources. Ultimately, we aim to achieve closer parity between the two and maximize the clean energy resource investments. As that old adage goes, a penny saved is a penny earned, and the same is really true for energy system optimization. Our analytic platform and our market delivery offers a streamlined way to directly buy those energy resources, and a streamlined way for CCAs or utilities to directly buy demand flexibility from the market and use it to address reliability constraints, address climate goals, or maintain system affordability.
Carmen, I'm sorry to interrupt, but a couple of people have noted the screen share doesn't seem to be working. If you could just try and
okay,
reset your slides. Not sure why, but it worked when we tried it before.
It did.
It did.
Let me do stop share.
All right, thank you for that. Sorry to interrupt, but
oh, no problem. I will.
All right, and thanks for that. It says it started screen
it's still
sharing.
pausing.
Why don't I go ahead and share screen here on my end, see if that works. Is that okay, Carmen?
Okay. Yeah, it's also non-essential to have the slides. I can just go through it as well.
If you stop your screen sharing, Carmen, Mark will try and share them on our end.
Okay, great.
There we go.
So
all right. Thank you, everybody. Carry on.
All right, great. You can go to the slide with the circle on it then.
This one here?
That one. Yep, there you go. So I wanted to share an example. In 2021, Recurve had an exciting opportunity to demonstrate how load management could quickly scale to support system reliability in California. After Gavin Newsom called the state agencies to action to do whatever they could to support the grid for 2022 and 2023, the California Public Utilities Commission adopted a program model that was really inspired by Recurve's demand flex market that we had initiated with MCE. And the basics of this program are that it's an open pay for performance marketplace that provides a clear price signal to aggregators using the avoided system costs, or ACC, with an optimization angle for peak needs. So you have an avoided cost curve that has an emphasis on the peak value of energy savings interventions. The payments to aggregators are based on the performance of their interventions with customers to drive changes in energy consumption. And this in turn enables the load serving entities to directly purchase that demand flexibility from all the different innovative companies that are offering customers energy services to reduce or shift their energy use. So at the middle of the market is a consistent measurement verification platform. That's us, Recurve's analytic platform that tracks the settlements based upon an upfront agreement on the methods of how those changes in energy consumption are quantified and how they relate back to a value stream that's pre-approved. By using an open source code base, it also makes this accessible to all market actors, and there's no mystery behind what performance looks like for the market. The flex market, you can go to the next slide, sorry. It's interesting to note that the demand flex market really delivered in this 1 year of program implementation. This program's impacts escalated rapidly to deliver roughly 44 million in total system value. Now, system value includes the energy savings, transmission, distribution, carbon impacts, et cetera. And this was above and beyond the state's already significant investment in energy efficiency for the state, which is about $1 billion a year. In fact, this program was able to deliver about half again the system benefits for the existing commercial energy efficiency portfolio and double the grid impacts for each kilowatt hour that was saved. So every kilowatt hour that was saved was being saved at a more important time of the day to support the grid. So these amplified incentives for that peak time of day were really important to drive savings towards impacts that were going to be complementary to what the grid needed at specific times. And this is how the flex market is really valuable as a virtual power plant. We had roughly 38 market aggregators that showed up to deliver high quality services to their customers. And they ran the gamut from lighting installations in parking garages, local grocery store, refrigerant upgrades, indoor agriculture, office buildings, chain stores, and electric vehicle managed charging. And the impacts that they were generating were likewise coming from a wide range of interventions because this is a technology agnostic solution to drive towards outcomes. So we're really encouraged by these preliminary results after 1 year in, and they show that in a short time period, this model can really deliver for customers and for the grid at a scale that matters. So my call to action for you all is to take a look at the flex market. If you're looking for an innovative solution that needs to scale rapidly, tap into the innovation that's out there in the state, and you need to allow you to invest in confidence in demand flexibility, the flex market might be the right choice for your CCA or other intervention.
Thank you so much, Carmen. I'd like to pass it over to Krishna.
Thank you, Rosa, and thank you to the Climate Center for having me here on this panel today. For those of you that don't know me, Krishna Nutaki, I'm the Vice President of EV Strategic Development here at SunPower. And we at SunPower are a top-rated residential solar company with over 35 years of experience serving customers in the United States. A fun fact our marketing team likes to share is that we're the only solar energy company that's been around longer than its warranty. Our core business today is to provide customers with an ecosystem of home energy solutions that enable homeowners access to cleaner, more affordable, and more sustainable energy. Today, our offering primarily includes our solar panels, our SunVault battery storage system, and EV charging. As we started to see a greater adoption of EVs by consumers, we wanted to expand our EV charging offering, and we saw a clear synergy between electric vehicles, the EV charging systems, and our solar and storage offering. Why did we see that synergy? What we noticed based on our own internal analysis of our existing customers and external data is that EV drivers choose to charge their vehicles at home about 80% of the time. By choosing to charge their electric vehicles' batteries with solar, drivers can not only power their homes and their vehicles with clean and more affordable energy, but so we saw that. So it's not surprising to us that we came to the conclusion that EVs and solar are very closely tied. This led us to partner with General Motors to develop a comprehensive solution where customers can leverage their vehicles as backup during a power outage system. Our partnership with GM is primarily focused on developing a home energy system that provides a new source of energy resilience. With vehicle-to-home charging capabilities, it will enable EV drivers to power their home with batteries in their electric cars or trucks and keep the home running during blackouts. As GM's exclusive solar provider and preferred EV charger installer, we're making the transition to solar easier for customers across the United States. We believe it's important because EV powered by the utility energy adds stress to the grid, and it also increases home energy bills. So installing solar and powering your EVs with solar will not only deliver clean and affordable energy, but it will also help alleviate the stress on the grid. So the program that I just talked about is slated to be available alongside with the retail launch of the 2024 Silverado EV, which is expected around fall of 2023. Thank you, and happy to field any questions.
Great, thank you so much, Krishna. So at this time, I'm going to move over to some panel questions. I've got a few prepared specifically for each panelist, and as I'm going through them, I'd like to remind the audience that we will have time at the end for audience Q&A, so please feel free to add your questions in the Q&A section of the Zoom chat, and we'll try to get to as many of them live as possible. So the first question I have is for Eli. You know, a lot of my customers, at least, you know, they have a passion for clean energy and they want to do the right thing, and they'd rather be on renewables than fossil fuels. But at the end of the day, everything comes down to dollar and cents when you're talking about business. So my question for you is, on average, how much would you say Zera is saving your manufacturing customers on their energy consumption?
Okay, it's not that I would say, it's the first thing is the research that came out. It's 125 pages of research results, and it's 17% on average that our customers were able to save. And I just want to make one more distinction. It's not save on their energy bill, it's save on their energy intensities. So our customers are manufacturing products. They need to manufacture as much as possible and as many pieces as they can. Downtime is the reason for inefficiencies. So making more doesn't actually mean that you save on that your bill is less, but the energy per unit goes down, and that's the 17%. We're now aiming for 25% for every customer that is joining. So that's the
fantastic. Yeah, that always makes a much better argument, especially for those manufacturing customers that may not have climate initiatives that top of mind. So that's fantastic. One more question for you. Given that you already have a considerable cost savings, you said 17 to potentially 25%. What other opportunities are there for either energy savings or emission reductions in the industrial sector in general?
There are a lot of opportunities or challenges and opportunities. Of course, energy storage and using renewables is a big one, both cost effective and the ability to move your consumption according to the right time of use. That's very important. It also has one more opportunity. So, of course, renewables and storage, but storage has one more opportunity where it makes it available if you need it in real time. So if I have cold storage or compressed air storage, those are big opportunities that we see today with our customers, and that's what they're after.
Great, thank you. So Carmen, moving on to you. Thank you for your presentation. That was very informative, and it's good to see that we have a client in common with MCE. Flex market seems like it's sort of just the beginning of what you could achieve based on your introduction. What other ways do you see data analytics help utilities and CCAs manage their programs or reduce climate emissions and more effectively manage load? And I just want to mention, I think there were a few sort of industry jargon that I'm not sure that everybody on the webinar understands. So I just want to remind, including myself. So if there's longer words, go for it. Thank you.
Okay, sounds good. You're absolutely right that the flex market is just kind of an example, a tip of the iceberg, as it were, which is interesting because it's kind of representative of the end game that we're going for with our solutions. So typically we're starting, as we did with MCE as our first client, looking at energy consumption patterns across their whole service territory, and then start building out insights about how programs could be tapping into that opportunity for demand flexibility. And then once they're running energy efficiency programs or other demand flexibility programs, how are those actually performing? So our open source code base is really built around the measurement and verification standardization of how you understand what performance means at the meter, and then being able to turn that around into insights and intelligence to optimize those programs. MCE was one of the first administrators that took a risk on energy efficiency programs and following all the rules that the Public Utilities Commission comes out with on those. So they have to design it in such a way that it's cost effective and meets all of these other rules that are out there. So when we were looking at opportunities in the commercial sector for them, one of the other solutions that came forward was, how do you get more innovation to come into your service territory to be able to deliver these solutions? Because we have ideas of where, using our platform, we knew where the opportunities were, we knew that programs could perform better, but how do we draw people in to deliver with us? And that's where the flex market was born, because it creates an opportunity for a very low barrier to entry to bring in lots of different companies that can interact with customers, but not have to do a full-scale contract with a utility or other. They can contract with Recurve directly, go do projects, see how they play out, and then keep building from there. And I'll pause there. There's a few other use cases in decarbonization optimization that we're doing. We're partnered with the Tech program, which is focused on heat pump water heaters and heat pump space heating retrofits in the state to meet decarbonization goals. So in that case, we're looking at targeting the interventions, tracking and monitoring what they do, and then having that outcome, kind of like Zira is doing. We're looking at bill impacts, we're looking at GHG impacts, and then understanding how those are playing into the state's goals.
Great, thank you. So the next question is for you, Carmen, but I do want to open it up to the rest of the panelists because I think it's probably applicable. We'll see. Talking about policy and public-private partnerships, which we've talked about a little bit here in the beginning, are there any policy changes or regulatory changes that you think need to happen, specifically in California, to scale the work that you've been doing?
Well, interesting that you should ask, because I spent a good chunk of my career, close to 10 years, in and around the California Public Utilities Commission. So as these ideas of the flex market, et cetera, were emerging, we mostly got this chance via the regulatory process. So to the speaker's earlier comment, for energy innovations to happen, that regulatory foothold can be really helpful to get kind of a startup an opportunity to shine. And that's really what the flex market did for us. There are still a lot of policies that we would like to see changed. One is to some of the cost effectiveness tests that are used to understand how public dollars are getting a return on investment are a bit arcane and not really designed for this direct purchase of demand flexibility. So we'd like to see that one changed. And then it's really more of a refresh on some of the other concepts of how we think about energy efficiency and demand response as a resource in our system. So things like making sure we're measuring it are other policy changes that have recently turned the corner, and we're really excited about the opportunities there.
Great, thank you so much, Carmen. So Krishna, turning to you, and shifting gears into what SunPower is doing with EVs. How fast do you see the market moving in this direction? And is there a market segment that SunPower and Ford want to focus on first?
Yeah, SunPower, you mean SunPower and GM? So in terms of how fast the market's moving, it's a completely new technology. So we will have the initial early adopters. But we're mainly focused on states where we also see high adoption of electric vehicles, California being the best example of that. So focusing on California, and in terms of adopting the technology, we do believe we have to jointly work with General Motors and industry players to help educate the customers on the benefits of having a bidirectional system versus simply installing a unidirectional level 2 charger, as the costs for a bidirectional system tend to be higher than a simple unidirectional system. So it's important for us, not only as SunPower and GM, but the whole industry, to educate the customers on the CVPs and the value propositions that they would get from incurring that higher cost of installing a bidirectional system.
Thank you. And on the topic of bidirectional system, my understanding is limited to it. My EV can be charged in my home, but it can also serve as backup power for the grid in times of high demand. Is that understanding correct?
That's right. So not only for That's correct. Not only for backup power for the grid, but also acting as a source of resiliency for your home. So in case of a power outage or a blackout, your vehicle then turns into your own, it kicks on and it starts drawing the power from the battery in the vehicle to power your home and the essentials in your home.
Great. And what potential do you see for that particular segment of the bidirectional EVs, specifically in California, and then I guess nationwide eventually?
Yeah, we're taking a staged approach to this. We're initially starting out by looking at this as a value proposition for resiliency, or providing resiliency for homeowners, and acting as a generator when the power goes out. But eventually, what we will want to do is work together with the utilities to improve the interconnection requirements. So these resources can act as as grid stress relieving events in times of high demand, where homeowners can opt in through programs like Home Connect or any other programs, and where not only are you reducing the power or reducing consumption in your home, but you're also helping put power back into the grid by using your vehicle. A fun fact we'd like to share is that typically homeowners install batteries, and a vehicle battery is 10 times more powerful than the SunVault or the Tesla Powerwall battery that homeowners tend to get installed with their solar powers.
Great. Thank you so much. And while we're compiling the audience questions, I do want to bring back, because I think each of you have some form of policy, policy angle, so to speak, where Carmen answered the question pretty well. So Eli and Krishna, is there any policy specifically in California that you think needs to be either changed or updated in order for your businesses to be successful? And if so, what are your recommendations for policy and or public-private partnerships?
Sure. I actually would like to reiterate on what Carmen said, and I think the policies around how you measure energy performance, how you measure and how you get the data for energy performance, and what is mandated as data for, and I'm talking specifically about industrial manufacturers, but it applies to everyone. I think there could be a fair amount of update. I know the California Energy Commission is investing a lot in this, including in the projects we are running for them. But I think that's the key for pushing forward.
Great, thank you. Krishna, do you have anything to add?
From an EV perspective, there are two things that we believe would be important in increasing adoption. One is improving the interconnection process. I mean, everyone who's probably gotten solar and or storage know that it's a lengthy process. So we believe we need to work together with utilities to improve that process and make it more seamless for the customer, as well as all the parties involved. The second thing, which some of the participants might be aware of, the Climate Center is sponsoring a bill around bidirectional charging and making that a requirement. I think that's a good step forward and helping with the adoption of this technology. But we do believe that'll potentially lead to more adoption. But we also need to work with the OEMs to start pushing out more vehicles that are bidirectional capable.
Great, thank you guys. On that note, I am going to hand it over to Doron. Looks like you guys have been active in answering most of the audience questions. So unless I've missed any, Doron, over to you.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Carmen, and thank you to everybody who's here. Let me just ask Barry or Rob to just quickly drop the link to the questions back into the chat. If you don't mind doing that, Barry, I wouldn't mind taking a peek at that. And thank you, Mark. I appreciate it. Yeah, so I mean, vehicle charging. Krishna, could you talk just a little bit more? I mean, I want to talk about SB 233 a little bit towards the end. That's the bidirectional charging bill. Can you talk a little bit more about what the challenges to that might be? What the automakers think about this? I'm just curious to get a little bit more thoughts on that.
Yeah, I can't specifically comment on automakers' point of view on this, but more from SunPower's point of view, I think it is a step in the right direction. And the bill is specifically talking about the chargers that get installed are bidirectional capable. But what we believe will help with adoption is also looking at potentially providing incentives for the total system. A typical bidirectional system tends to be a lot more expensive than a level 2 charger that anyone that has electric vehicle today gets installed in their homes. So any incentives that are focused more on the customer can help with the adoption of the full bidirectional chargers.
That sounds good, and we'll be talking a little bit more about that in just a little bit. And I'm not sure if Carmen or Elhai wants to talk about bidirectional charging. If you do, I'm happy to. Carmen's like, I don't know. I would say that for myself, I mean, I have a solar system on my house without battery storage, and I have an EV in my driveway that does not connect to my solar and home system, and that seems like a huge oversight when we've got 1.5 million electric cars in California right now, and many millions more coming. It seems like we have a huge opportunity. I'll just sort of make this comment. A lot of people say to me, oh, electric vehicles are going to strain the grid. Do we have the capacity to add so many more electric vehicles? And I would say that we have the capacity to add a lot more electric vehicles if we turn them into a grid asset, as opposed to just something that takes energy from the grid. So this is really part of the sort of the technology and innovation that we need to see happening. Elhai, I'd like to ask you again a little bit more about, perhaps you could give us a specific example. We call this webinar series Stories and Solutions. Could you give us a specific example, a story of a company that's using Xero's product, and give us a little more granular look into what actually happens when they deploy the software and what actual changes they're able to make in terms of GHG reductions and in terms of cost savings?
Sure. So I'll give an example. I will not say the name of the customer, but it is a beverage manufacturer, a bottler. And I'll also talk about the storage side, or the bidirectional charging on the industrial aspect, not about not specifically cars. So this customer is making a beverage bottle. So they take water, add sugar, put it in a bottle, and there it goes into the trucks and then to the retailers. When we started, we basically started working from the energy viewpoint, helping them to solve one of their biggest problems, which is compressed air. They had a huge amount of compressed air consumption, which is actually electricity, right? You take electricity, you compress it, you compress air, and you use it on the shop floor. And all of our customers do the same. Of course, they use compressed air, but compressed air, when it leaks, it does not, you don't smell it. It's not dangerous. And you can hear it, but it's in a noisy environment, it's very hard to detect. So the first thing we did is basically using the AI to understand how much are they actually leaking, and found out that they were leaking about 50% of their compressed air. Taking action on that needed the shop floor, but what we did is basically set up a metric of how much compressed air they have, how much they're using on the production floor, and how much is going to waste. And that was their North Star in fixing the problems they had, the leakages they had on the shop floor. The second step was understanding what they use the compressed air for. So when it's in process, what are they using it for? And they use it for moving things around, and also for blowing bottles. So taking compressed air in high pressure and blowing bottles and filling them with liquid. This process is not effective, especially when you start it, because you don't have enough pressure. So what we suggested and modeled using the data is a large storage tank. That large storage tank basically stores compressed air in a very large tank, so you don't have wasted product and energy when you start up the machine. Turns out that storage actually also helped keeping everything smooth and streamlined and running on the ongoing processes, not only on the startups, basically reducing their downtime, which helped them make more bottles, which basically reduces the energy footprint per unit of product. So what we did is we took data, implemented it in models, and showed the effectiveness of what it can do, then validated and measured it on an ongoing basis to make sure that they use it effectively. And that's what we still do. helping them understand how it is used on an ongoing basis and making them as efficient as possible. That's a specific example.
That's great. And that's a very helpful specific example, because I think a lot of times we think of greenhouse gas reductions, we really focus on things like the fuel that we're burning, in the vehicles that we're driving, or the electricity that we're buying and where it's coming from. But a lot of times some of these savings can come from unexpected places like compressed air. I just want to reflect on a story from another one of our business members, a local winemaker named Hobo Wines. And they were trying to figure out how to strip greenhouse gases out of their process entirely. Everything like not putting the foil caps on the wine bottles, using lighter weight bottles. One of the things they did is they realized that to wash out the barrels that they were storing their wine in, the oak barrels, they were using many gallons of water for each barrel. They invested in a machine that uses steam, and instead of using multiple gallons to wash each barrel, they only use about a half a cup of water to wash each barrel, dramatically reducing. And you wouldn't think, oh, washing the barrels is a big part of their climate footprint, but a lot of times we can find these savings in unexpected places. And it sounds like that's something that your company is really helping people do.
Yes, and I would like to point out one more thing. When we talk about savings, and when I said 17% savings, that's just from using the data to improve, not by investing in storage and other options that might promote even more savings. So that's without investing in capital expenses, just the operational changes.
Awesome. That's great. And I'd like to just sort of ping Russ for a moment. Russ, if you're still with us, I'd like to bring you in a moment, maybe talk about some other innovations and specific companies that are happening. There you are. I'd love to just sort of like hear a little bit more from Silicon Valley. Like, are there any stories that you can tell of new young companies or new innovations that you're seeing that you think are particularly exciting that maybe aren't yet on the public radar?
I wish that were my expertise, but it's not. I'm relying on the folks on this call to help us understand. It's interesting. We don't always have good visibility into the startups. They're not on the screen. You really have to be plugged in a particular way. But I do want to make a big overarching observation about Silicon Valley and why I think this is difficult, but also so important. Silicon Valley's innovation is usually preceded in a particular way. It's entrepreneurs acting in silos, not having to be collaborators, just going into their own skunt works and making their products. Well, that doesn't work for clean energy. We have to take a completely different approach, and it's not included in Silicon Valley's natural skill set. So that's one thing. The second thing that's so interesting to me is that the classic Silicon Valley story is that you're always looking for those big returns, the big instant returns, the 10x returns. In this space, in the energy space, we have to be thinking about it differently. We need to be looking at incremental gains and different kinds of business models instead of that, that home run. So that too doesn't play to Silicon Valley's typical mindset or to its set of strengths. Finally, I mentioned it earlier, but I just want to stress the type of work that we're talking about on this webinar is collaborative, and it's collaborative with public sector entities. Also not in our skill set. We have to figure that out. And that's just why I think it's so important that we have this kind of dialogue and discussion.
Excellent points, Russ. Thank you so much. I appreciate you making those points. And in talking about collaboration, I want to focus on investment. Alhai, you brought up investment. Rosa, I'd like to direct a question to you. As someone who manages a portfolio of companies, could you talk a little bit about, what the opportunities are in the banking and finance sector? We had a couple of questions about, is PACE financing the best way to finance these things? If you could talk a little bit for people who don't know what PACE, property assessed clean energy, where you do energy improvements and it shows up on your property tax bill. Is that a useful tool? Can you talk about what some of the investment tools are? If there's people on this call who are like, I want to do these things, I don't have the cash in hand, how can they go about building relationships and partnerships to make the investments in their companies to address the issues we're discussing?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. So first, to sort of, start off where Russ left off. As a bank, we're sort of the last piece of the puzzle when it comes to funding a project or a company, because a bank has to underwrite to, how it's going to get repaid. It's not equity. We don't get 10x returns if the company does really well. Our only, as a bank, our only upside is the interest rate that we charge. And so for that reason, banks are inherently more conservative. However, I like to, think that we're a little bit more innovative in the way that we look at credit. And that doesn't mean that we're not that we're taking more risk. It just means that we're thinking a little bit outside of the box, that, it's not check the box applications that we're receiving. It's we're having conversations, we're understanding the business opportunity, and then seeing, is this something that the bank can get comfortable with? And the best example of that is what I described earlier on with the CCAs. Now, going back to your question, cash is king. And so a lot of times when I talk with startups that are sort of teetering on the bank loan eligibility, line, so to speak. They've either started with some grant funding, which is where policy comes into play in a large capacity, and then they either have some private equity funding from a third party or a group, which is why that sector is really important. Silicon Valley, kind of what Russ was talking about, is really important to drive innovation, because banks really won't lend to a company or project unless there is equity in it. And there's people that come up with great ideas, but they don't have large pockets. And so that's why those kind of private equity funding sources are really important. And then once the company concept or the project concept has been proven and sort of commercialized, that's when the banks can really get involved and kind of understand where the cash flow comes from and how the repayment would work. And I love talking to startup companies, especially the ones that are just like right there, and they're almost there. I can see sort of through the clouds that they're almost going to make it, but they're not quite ready for a bank loan. And so it's kind of a fun conversation to have, and a lot of times we'll follow up with them once they are ready. And then the last thing I'll say is that there are some government programs, specifically in the state of California, that I know of, where there are government loan guarantees that'll partner with banks to help sort of put training wheels, if you will, on those types of credits. And that's where the bank can get comfortable, because you've got some sort of backstop outside of just the company or the project cash flows itself. On PACE financing, I can't speak to that directly. I'm not very much involved in it. I know it's a good tool for, on the commercial side, it's a good tool for owners of commercial buildings that want to finance, for example, solar or microgrid or something like that, and have it assessed on their tax bill. My experience, though, and again, I'm not an expert, so don't quote me on it, is that type of financing can be a little bit more expensive than direct bank financing if you were just to get a, for example, commercial real estate loan, refinance, and then put solar and whatnot. So it's a tool for companies and owners of real estate that may not have access to that market, and it definitely opens up an opportunity for those individuals. So hopefully that's helpful.
Very helpful. Thank you so much, Rosa. And you mentioned microgrids. And actually, Carmen, I'd like to bring you back into this conversation, because we've had a couple of questions pop in. What's Recurve's perspective on microgrids? Will your product approach create more possibilities for microgrids? Microgrids being, we believe, an important tool to build resilience in the energy sector. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, as I noted in my answer, we don't really have now. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes, you cut out for a moment, but you're back. Go ahead.
Got it. We don't have any examples of microgrids operating in the flex market right now, but that doesn't mean that they couldn't in the future. So the basic mechanics of the flex market is paying for reductions or shifting of energy consumption patterns for a given period of time, and then tying that to the value of the grid. So obviously microgrids can tap into that value stream. It's more a mechanics of back to a policy barrier. Typically the funding mechanisms or other ways that these programs and state initiatives have been funded, they typically haven't allowed for maximum flexibility across those different solutions. So there's one proceeding and funding bucket for microgrids, and it has all these little barriers and rules around it. There's one funding mechanism for energy efficiency, and you can only do these types of technologies. The world we would like to see is more of an open market model where we're all aiming towards that end output of how we're reducing load, shaping, shifting load, and getting to the climate goals, so that you can be layering the value that might be coming from multiple entities. Say, for example, CARB will pay for low GHG refrigerants. When you're doing a grocery store retrofit, you can be layering the value of CARB's initiatives alongside the California Public Utilities value stream for energy efficiency. And then you have another opportunity to do a project, go deeper, do different kinds of interventions in that space. And that's kind of one of the ways that I think microgrids could get a traction in this space, because they're feeding multiple objectives.
Great. Thank you so much for that perspective. Now, as we, we got time for a couple more questions. Krishna, I'd like to bring you back into the conversation. We're talking about the money, we're talking about the software, but we're also talking about hardware and stuff, right? And SunPower certainly makes stuff, good stuff, technology, hardware. And so I have a question, and this may be kind of like a sort of elemental, but I want to make sure everyone's on the same page. We have a question about, how the batteries and the grid connection all work. When utility power shuts off, if you have solar panels and battery storage, will the solar panels replenish your storage, whether it's stationary or mobile storage, once it's been used, and then continue to power the house? How long can you power your house with batteries? I think some people may know the answer to this, but not everybody does. So let's make sure we're all clear. Let's talk about how the solar plus storage would actually work in a real world scenario for a potential customer, commercial or residential.
Yeah, happy to do so. And I'm going to use the answer that everyone hates, which is it depends. But to answer the question around powering the home, being powered by a battery storage system, either it be stationary or mobile, that should kick in when there is a power outage. The purpose of a storage system would be to start providing support for essential appliances within a home, depending on the amount of storage units you have, that'll drive how much of the home can be backed up or not. As for the solar power powering the battery, that's a good question. Today we have some limitations around that, because the rooftop solars tend to be grid connected, and there's some challenges around running the solar system when there's a grid outage. But the team is looking at technologies that would allow for the solar system to continue to power the home when there's a grid outage.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. And so the next question I have is for you, Alhai. And this is a question about motivation and how we make these changes happen at greater speed and scale. From your experience with the people that you work with, because you provide a product to other businesses, you're a B2B type situation. So to what level are people investing in your product to reduce greenhouse gases? And to what extent are people investing in your product to save money? Like, what's really driving your growth? Is it really all the bottom line? How much is greenhouse gas reductions really playing into people's decisions when it comes to working with Zira?
It's a very interesting question. I think it's got three layers to it. Of course, it's about the bottom line. We're talking about businesses, and then what they're looking for is the bottom line and how much can you save and what's the ROI. But there are other driving forces for that. The other ones are top line. Can I produce more if I manage my energy correctly? Can I use energy metrics to produce more? And that's also yes. And the last part is what about my customers? If I'm a manufacturer, I sell my produce to retailers that make me compete against other makers according to my sustainability metrics. So the consumer is actually the one that is driving it and making that mandatory. When you answer all three, then you're able to generate a good solution, a valuable solution for the customers. But it's all about staying in business and doing more with less energy. In terms of the reducing emissions, it's part of the reporting. It's becoming a competitive advantage to have a lower emission rating, so basically becoming more sustainable. So I think that's what drives that, not necessarily software.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Elhai. Well, in just a couple moments, I'd like to give everyone an opportunity to take action on this bidirectional charging issue. I'm going to give you a little summary of where we're at on the bill that is sponsored by the Climate Center. But before I do that, I'd like to turn to each of our panelists, and I'm going to do it in the order in which you appeared on the screen originally, just to give you a chance for like final thoughts, takeaways. Russ, I want to start with you. Like, if there's one thing you want people to remember from this really insightful conversation today, what is that one thing you want people to go home with?
Oh, gosh. I guess if I could say only one thing, is that the people on this call and others like them are my heroes. Our region hasn't been serious enough about this problem. We've been working on other important problems, but we need to figure out how to mobilize at scale and to do it with the same kind of urgency that we brought to creating platforms for commerce. We've got to do this, and we need to be supporting this kind of innovation.
Thank you so much, Russ, and thank you for your partnership, Joint Venture Silicon Valley and the Climate Center. We're proud to work with you too, so we really appreciate you being here and everything you do down in Silicon Valley. Rosa, I'd like to turn to you for your one takeaway. What's one thing you want people to go home with after they sign off, after they take action in a couple minutes?
Yeah, that's a tough question. There's a few things. But if I had to boil it down to one, I would say, a lot of times clients that I come across, you have a little bit of, there's sometimes tunnel vision, even with bankers, we see things through one lens. And if we can work together and try to understand each other's industries, what is it that makes each of your business tick, from the policy side to the equity and the business side to the financing need. I think that's where the sort of powerful partnerships happen. I know that's more than one thing, but it's one thing in my head, so it counts, right?
Yes, it does. Thank you so much, Rosa, and thank you to River City Bank for your many years of support, and we're proud to work with you, as well as everybody on this call. So Elhai, I'd like to turn it to you. One thing you want people to take home with them after they log off in 5 minutes.
So I think that at the beginning of this webinar, you said that you're talking about 2030, which is just around the corner. We actually talk about 2050, work like it's 2050. For us, it is right now. Work like it's 2050 right now. Data enables it. I believe that understanding where you are is the initial, it's the spark for anything that goes after. So if you are a business owner, if you're a manufacturer, if you're even a private home, first know where you are, where you stand, what drives those consumptions, and then start improving bit by bit. I think that's my take.
Thank you, Elhai. Work like it's 2050. I like that. I'm going to keep that in mind all day. Carmen, what is one thing you want to send people home with really briefly?
I will boil it down to open markets drive innovation, and thank God for the innovation of CCAs in California, because they've helped stimulate and motivate innovations that I wouldn't have even imagined were possible.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. Innovation. Absolutely. Krishna, your one takeaway today.
One takeaway for the audience is don't let range anxiety hinder you from getting an EV.
Beautiful. I love that. Yes, I drove to Albuquerque and back in my EV. Range was not a problem. So thank you all for that. And that's actually, Krishna, thank you for that fantastic segue to the last part of our webinar today, which is our opportunity for our audience to take action. And the action is going to be on SB 233. And you just saw a link drop into the chat. Please click on that link and it will give you an opportunity to send a message to your state representatives supporting Senate Bill 233, which was sponsored by the Climate Center, the Union of Concerned Scientists, and Nuve. This bill would ensure that all vehicles sold in California will be bidirectionally capable and will be able to power your house like a Chevy Silverado truck will be able to do, that all vehicles should have that capacity so that we can take all of the soon-to-be 8 million electric vehicles in California and turn them into a grid asset. This bill was introduced by Senator Skinner out of UC Berkeley. It has passed through the Assembly, both committee and floor votes, in the Senate. It has passed through the Senate on both committee and floor votes. It has passed the Assembly Transportation and Utilities and Energy Commissions. It's headed to the Assembly Appropriations Committee, and that's why now is the time to make your voice heard. Let's make sure that everyone on the Appropriations Committee and everyone in the California Assembly is aware of how important it is to ensure that vehicles serve as an asset to the grid and don't become a problem, but be part of the solution. That's what SB 233 intends to do. It's important to note battery storage is increasingly becoming part of addressing the challenges of increasing renewable energy and taking down peaker plants. This is an equity issue. This is an economic issue. This is an innovation issue, et cetera. So there's a lot of good reasons why SB 233 makes sense. We hope that you'll all join us in supporting this bill and let your assembly members and senators know it's easy to do. Just click on that link. You put in your zip code. It knows where you are. It knows who your assembly member is. You send them a letter. It's very important. We want everyone in the assembly to feel the groundswell of support. You can do it as an individual. You can also do it as a business member. And as businesses obviously carry a lot of weight in the state of California, we talk about job creators, we talk about innovators. Make sure that if you're doing this as a business, that they know that you're doing this as a business. I'd also like to invite you all one more time to join the business network of the Climate Center. Please contact me at Doron, D-O-R-O-N, at theclimatecenter.org if you want more information. And I'd like to conclude now by just taking a moment to thank everybody on this panel. Rosa, thank you so much for great moderating. Russell, thank you so much for everything you do in Silicon Valley. Elhai, Krishna, and Carmen, thank you for the work you do at your companies. And recognize that for each of you, you're part of a team. As are we here at the Climate Center. We're all working as a team and working together collaboratively. We can solve the climate crisis. We must solve the climate crisis. And I want to thank each and every one of you, both our panelists, our guests, and especially all of our attendees who've been here today. All of you, we really appreciate you being here. We thank you for taking the time to join this webinar. We look forward to seeing you at the next webinar. Please take action as we suggested, endorse Climate Safe California, and join the Climate Center Business Network, and keep doing, most importantly, keep doing what you're doing in your communities, at your companies, and your organizations. We're all in this together, and together we can solve the challenges we face and create a prosperous and climate safe future for us all. So thank you all for being here, and I look forward to seeing you all next time, especially to our speakers, Russ, Rosa, Elhai, Krishna, and Carmen. Thank you all very much. I look forward to seeing you all again soon. Take care. Bye-bye.